Good morning, guys. Welcome to General Science. We're going to continue talking on birds this week. Last week we talked about 4 different bird orders. We talked about Galliformes, which are like chickens and quails and turkeys. We talked about Anseriformes, which are ducks and geese and swans. We've talked about Piciformes, which are woodpeckers, and Psittaciformes, which are parrots and macaws. So hopefully you remember that from last week. If you don't, check out the other video and you'll be able to get caught up. Today and this week we're only going to be talking about 2 bird orders, and the reason why I'm only going to have 2 bird orders this week is because I have a little bit longer of assignment for you to do. So I didn't want to spend too much time teaching you about a bunch of bird orders when you have a little bit longer of an assignment to do. So we're just going to jump right on into it so that you guys can get working on your totally awesome assignment. The first one that we're going to talk about today is Apodiformes. Okay, that's Apodiformes. Now remember, again, like we talked last week, it always ends in formes. There's only a couple bird orders that don't end in formes, so really all you have to remember is the first part. And how I remember, I'm going to tell you how I remember this name as one of the first things I tell you today, just because this one's a little hard to remember, but the Latin word, so this word right here, apode or apodi, in Latin, it actually means no foot or footless, which actually goes into one of the characteristics with this particular bird order. These birds have extremely tiny feet. They're almost impossible to see unless you're holding the bird up close and you can see its feet, but when it's perched on a branch or it's flying around, you can't see its feet because they tuck them up inside their feathers, and they're extremely small. They have small feet and small legs. Okay? These birds are interesting in the fact where we talked about the characteristics of birds 2 weeks ago, when we talked about how birds have skin and scales and beaks and how they're warm-blooded and how they're like a mixture of all the different types of animals. These birds are an exception to the rule because they actually do not. So they do not have scales. They only have skin, so even if you were to look at their tiny, tiny feet, they don't have scales that coat their legs or feet. It's just skin, which is kind of cool that they're still a bird, and they have all the other characteristics except for the fact that they don't have scales, which is kind of cool. Let's see here. I wanted to talk about something called lethargy. Now, lethargy, comes from the word lethargic. When we get tired or we're not really paying attention, sometimes when you guys go to school and you're up late and you get to class and you're not fully comprehending what's being taught, or you're not really there, your mind is wandering, or you're tired, that means you're lethargic. It means you're just really, really tired and you can't focus. So these birds do something called lethargy, and lethargy is a way that they can slow their body down, so they slow their heart rate. So lethargy slows your heart rate down. It lowers your body temperature. And this is good and it's bad. It's bad in the sense where when they are in this state of lethargy, they aren't totally coherent. They don't know exactly what's going around them or what's happening. So if a predator comes by, they're not going to be able to fly away. They don't recognize it as a predator because they're lethargic or they're in lethargy. But the good thing about that is that these birds have a very, very, very high metabolism. That means that they need to eat a ton of food, okay? High energy food to keep them going throughout the day. And at nighttime, when they can't forage for food or whatever, if they didn't go into this lethargy, they would literally work their bodies to death and die in the middle of the night because they wouldn't have enough calories to keep their body going. So they go into this lethargy to conserve their energy through the night so that they can have rest. And then in the morning, when they get out of this lethargy, they go out immediately and start feeding because they need that energy and that they need their metabolic rate to go up. Okay? They are extremely fast flyers. They fly super, super fast. And I'm going to give you, so again, up here in the corner with the star, I'm going to give you some examples of these birds. So one that you might not really know is called a swift. Okay, swifts are kind of cool. They usually fly only at nighttime or at dusk. They have extremely long wings and small bodies, so you'll see them flying. They fly very fast, very unique. But also one that you might know are hummingbirds. We see hummingbirds all the time in the springtime, in the summer, and in the fall. This is because these particular bird and this bird order in Utah are migratory. They don't necessarily stay here year-round. But that's why you'll constantly see hummingbirds going from flower to flower, and they're just collecting nectar all day long because they are high-energy birds and they need that sugar water and those calories to keep going throughout the day. Yeah. Anyways, this is Apodiformes. Now remember, Apodiformes in Latin means no foot or footless. So if you think of a hummingbird and you hardly ever see their feet when they're flying or even when they're perched, they are in Apodiformes, okay? Now, let me erase this, and we're going to talk about one more bird order really quickly. It won't take too long. Strigiformes. Strigiformes is spelled S-T-R-I-G-I-F-O-R-M-E-S. Strigiformes. Now, Strigiformes, I don't know how to help you remember Strigiformes because it's just one of those things that you have to remember. It's just a very unique word, and these are very unique birds. So that's kind of how I put the two together. I think Striga, that's a weird word, and these particular animals are unique in their characteristics. So we're going to talk about Strigiformes. Now, first off, there are about 200 species. That's quite a bit, just because we don't necessarily see these birds that often, so it's surprising that there's 200 species. It's quite a range. We usually don't see these birds because they're usually nocturnal, or they are up at night. Okay? And usually we can't see birds flying in the sky at night. Now you might hear them, but you won't see them necessarily. These guys are kind of cool. So they are known to have talons, which are extremely sharp claws, which tells you that they are a predatory bird. They are carnivorous. They eat things like mice, small birds, sometimes lizards. Some really small species eat insects. They need these talons, or these claws, to grab onto their prey. Okay? Along with their talons, they have a sharp... Oops. Spelt that wrong. They have a sharp beak that is curved. Now, we did talk about Psittaciformes, and they also have that curved beak that goes like this, right? But that beak is specialized for crushing nuts and berries and large fruits and veggies. These guys' beak are very sharp, and they are used to rip flesh off. Flesh or feathers or fur, okay? But something really cool that you will only find with these birds is that they have pellets. Okay? Now what I mean by pellet is when they eat their food and they digest it, these particular birds don't have the acidity in their stomach to digest bone and fur and teeth, things like that. So what it does is their body, their stomach digests the meat and the blood and the tissues of that particular animal to get the nutrients, and then all the bones and fur are collected in one area and they actually cough them up. Kind of like a cat. If any of you have cats, they cough up hairballs. It's kind of gross. These guys do the same thing, and they're called pellets. or owl pellets. Okay, owl pellets, and you can see them. They look like a giant turd, but it's just full of bone and hair, and it's just something they cough up, which is kind of cool when you're studying owls and what they eat, because what scientists will do is they'll collect these pellets and you can pull them apart, and the entire skeleton will be inside of this pellet. So you can put together a mouth skeleton or whatever it is that they ate. You can put it together and then you can see what their food source is, which is kind of cool. Some of these, another characteristic that they have is that they have very soft feathers. Now, feathers in general are very soft. These guys have extremely soft feathers, and that's because they're nocturnal. They need to fly at night and they need to catch their prey. The thing is when you catch animals that are up at nighttime, they have specialized organs and parts of their body that help them cope and survive during the night. So they have big ears or big eyes. So these particular birds have very soft feathers for flying, and the reason why they have this is because when they fly, they are virtually silent. Sometimes if you're going on a hike in a mountain, or you have chickens and they flutter and fly, you can totally hear it. It's like a sound. Sometimes it's quite intimidating, but owls don't do that. Strigiformes don't do that. They fly very, very silently. You can hardly hear them at all, which is really, really cool. It's an adaptation for being nocturnal. They also have something that is different from most birds that give them their characteristics, and that is that they have huge eyes. Okay, they've evolved to have these massive eyes for seeing at nighttime, but they also have a round face. Now, their round face isn't like a ball, okay? It's not a sphere. It actually, if we were looking at a profile view, and this is exaggerated, okay, their face, let's say their beak is right here. We've got a nice little bird beak there. Their face would kind of be round like this, okay? Now, the reason why it's round like that is because if you were to take when you can't hear something, like if you can't hear something in the distance, or your mom or dad yelling at you, or the music in the next room or whatever, what do you do with your hands? Go like this, right? And it helps you hear better. You can totally tell a difference when you put your hands behind your ear and cup them like this, because the sound is vibrating off the walls and it catches it in your hands. These birds do the same thing. They have really good ears for finding their prey, so they have this bowl-shaped or this round face in order to have all the sounds come towards their face and their ears, which is awesome. Okay. Now, for an example for these, I already told you what they were. They were owls. Okay, an owl is in Strigiformes. There are other birds, but for right now, I just want you to remember owls, because we do have them here in Utah, and we can see them and hear them. Most likely hear them at night with their iconic hoo-hoo sound, okay? So if you have any questions on any of this stuff, please email me. You know my email address. Keep in contact as best you can. I made this video short because you do have a large assignment, which I will post on your Schoolmaster later today as soon as I get done making other videos, okay? Hope you're doing well.